Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about, again, the understanding between displaying or testing or even learning to display maximum strength or strength in general versus actually building it. And I think this can be highlighted very, very well by looking at various max effort lifts versus your actual hypertrophy work so that people understand this better. And this needs to be made very, very clear. The research is pretty overwhelming that hypertrophy and muscle itself, muscle growth, and that could be muscle growth relative to the joint angles you're utilizing, or muscle growth of the weakest muscle in a kinetic chain, that is how we get most of our strength. Right? Body composition, muscle mass relative to our frame and our leverages is the single most important factor in strength. So if you want to build strength, obviously your hypertrophy training, whatever that is comprised of, because hypertrophy training is a very, very loose term because everything can build hypertrophy. That is where you build your strength. Our maxes are how we display them. And so people need to understand there's a difference between displaying or testing or learning how to max out versus actually building strength or training for strength. And that can be highlighted again by the example someone asked me the other day. Hey, you did that 14-inch box squat. You've told people that they need to train deeper than that. Is that breaking that rule? No, not at all. Because displaying a heavy max off of a different box height than you train at isn't training. That's not training. That isn't done with the intention of, hey, this is what's going to build the muscle and the coordination that I need to maximize strength. All right? All of our volume, that's our training. Your assistance work is your training. Your speed work is your training. These are the things that you undertake hoping to change the structures of your body. Anything that we do with the intention of progressively loading with the intention of causing a long-term change in our body in a planned manner, that's training. So in the case of even if you take some of the workouts that I do to where I hit a max on a random lift and then do a bunch of volume for hypertrophy after, the training is the latter part. All right, that's your actual training. Because the latter is done to build muscle mass, to cause hypertrophy in many cases at joint angles that are specific to that joint angle, because we have muscle fibers that are relative to those joint angles in certain heads of a muscle. But all that hypertrophy work, that is training to over time build your strength potential. Right? In other words, anything that gives you maximum jactitude, anything that's giving you gains, anything that's giving you gains where you want it, where you need it to get stronger, that is your strength training. Raises your potential. Maxing out is different. That's learning to display strength. That's learning to strain. And that's an important distinction that needs to be made. And the point is, yes, you can max out on various random lifts. That's its own topic. There are reasons why we might want to do that. Because at the end of the day, a 1 rep max is a 1 rep max. It teaches you to strain, it teaches you to grind, teaches you to push or pull against a maximum weight. It can also be used to take you to school. It can be used to show you where your weak links are. It can show you which muscles need the most work. It can show you which joint angles need the most work. It can teach you better leverages and bar paths. I mean, and that's a perfect example. We could talk about things like changing the range of motion. Sometimes when we slightly reduce a range of motion on a given exercise, what does it teach us? Especially if we have to move something from a dead stop, that can show us where our best bar path is, because you won't be able to move a maximum weight at any position. What's going to happen? When you reach a certain weight, you're going to find that you can't move it from something that's 2 or 3 inches above the normal bottom of your lift from a dead stop, whether it's off of a pin or a box or a board. What are you going to find? You're going to find there's only going to be one position where when you reach a certain weight where it will budge. In other words, you're going to have to reposition yourself sometimes. There's only going to be one bar path in which that weight will move when you get to above 95%. When you get to a maximum weight, you're not going to be able to move the bar 1 inch to the forward or backward and still break it from that spot. You're not going to be able to. There's going to be a weight limit eventually to where there's only one position where it'll budge from when you get close enough to a max or at a max. Was that a learning tool? Of course it is. You go to school at that point because you learn that for your body that you can only move an object, a barbell, to a certain position. You can only move it to a certain position. You learn about your leverages. You learn about your personal bar paths. All right, that's a valuable training tool. That's an extremely valuable training tool. But is it going to make you stronger? Not directly. Because reduced range of motion causes less hypertrophy. And nobody's getting ultra jacked either off of doing a heavy single. That's one heck of a slow way to gain muscle. So it's not building your strength. It's teaching you how to display your strength. In other words, if you find your best leverage is, that's just teaching you how to move a heavy weight. That's teaching you how to lift a heavy object. It's teaching you how to pull against a heavy object. That's what it's doing. So when we say it teaches you how to do so, it teaches you how to find your leverages. Now, some people would look at that and say, well, that only applies to a barbell. Well, no, it doesn't. If you learn how to find your personal leverages against a maximum weight, that teaches you how to find your leverages pushing and pulling in general. You learn how to get into your positions that are required to exert maximum force. Well, that's what all sports are. That applies to someone who's grappling someone for floor work. That's all about finding your leverages. Now, I'm not saying the exact lever that you use on a block pull on a deadlift or a board press on a bench press. I'm not saying that's going to be the exact same lever for grappling someone. But it does teach you how to find your leverages. It teaches you to practice it. Same thing, you learn to find those points where you can produce the most force for a push. That teaches you how to dig in and find your levers out on a playing field when you have to tackle somebody. Or an emergency situation, you know, people always say the hypothetical, if a log has fallen on a baby out in the woods or a car is on top of a baby and you need to pull it off of them. These silly hypotheticals that people make up. Well, you learn how to find the leverages. You know where your levers are to where you can push or pull the most weight. That can apply to other stuff. Now, it obviously applies to your barbells. But you learn how to just get strong, in other words. You learn how to get strong. But that's not building strength. We build our strength off of the hypertrophy work. Perfect example of you guys watching this clip, me doing a 2-inch block pull. But then all this other stuff, the good mornings, glute ham raises. Now, is anybody going to get really strong on a deadlift by doing only singles on a deadlift, do a couple different ranges of motion? Probably not. You're going to get to your potential on the deadlift. You're not going to gain any real muscle from that, though. But you do a bunch of heavy and progressive overload on some good mornings. Look at the muscles involved in the good morning versus a deadlift. Real similar, aren't they? So you could take an exercise like a good morning, very easy to recover from. You can do large volumes of that. You build a bunch of muscle through everything on a good morning. Is that going to carry over to a deadlift? Yes, it will. But that glute ham raise, all that hamstring work, is it going to help you lock a deadlift better? You bet it is. Your hypertrophy work is where we develop our strength. Maxes are how we learn how to display it. So hopefully that makes sense to people and they understand the difference here. Alright guys, well that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.